Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another episode of In the Frame. Today we're going to look at the Imprint box set of some films directed by Walter Hill. This is Imprint spine numbers 164 and 169. Now, Walter Hill is kind of an interesting director because he never really gets talked about. I've never seen a bad Walter Hill film, even though I haven't seen all of them. And for me, he's probably never made a truly great film either. But his batting average is pretty high. I suppose he's kind of similar to John McTiernan, I guess. You know, nobody's ever going to call him an auteur, but he just makes really enjoyable, really watchable films. This box set by Imprint was kind of talked about and for months before it was actually released. It does have one 4K, and a lot of the films, or quite a few of the films, are available in other places. But for me, I decided to pick it up because I only had one of the films on Blu-ray. There is no booklet, which I was actually kind of surprised about because the other Imprint box sets do have booklets, but never mind. As I say, there's a ton of really good extras in these films. So we go to his debut, Hard Times, which is the one film I did have on Blu-ray on Eureka Masters of Cinema. This is from 1975, starring Charles Bronson and James Coburn, who did not get along, apparently. One of Walter Hill's strengths, I think, is getting on with actors and being able to shepherd and marshal kind of actors, and he certainly needed to do this with Bronson and Coburn. It's a film about Depression era bare knuckle boxing in the South. It's again a really solid film. It's Charles Bronson's, obviously Jill Ireland's in it as well, Strother Martin, who we all love, and this is the one release in the set that doesn't actually have any extras, but it's a really enjoyable, solid little film. And then we come to probably one of his most famous films. It's 1978's The Driver, and this is the one on 4K. I do believe Studio Canal has a 4K as well, which the artwork is very similar to the artwork of Drive, Nicholas Winding Refn, because it is essentially the same film almost, but Drive just isn't as good as The Driver. And in this you do get the 4K and the Blu-ray. And this does have a ton of extras. I mean, obviously this is pretty much La Samurai by Melville. It's one of the classic man in a room films. Ryan O'Neal, one of his better performances. I mean, this and Barry Lyndon might actually be his best performances. Bruce Dern as a cop who doesn't always play by the rules. It doesn't have the usual ending that these kinds of films have. Isabelle Adjani is wonderful as well, as if you've seen La Samurai, you know what kind of role she plays. It's just a wonderful film. And on the Blu-ray, you get a commentary by Matthew Asbury Gear from 2023. You get an interview with Bruce Dern, who always gives the best interviews in the business. That's from 2023. And you get actor Rudy Ramos on The Driver from 2023. He's the character called Teeth for some reason. Another reason to like the film is none of the characters actually have names. And then there's an interview with editor Robert K. Lambert from 2023. So that's all on the Blu-ray, and then on the 4K there's a Walter Hill Masterclass featurette. There's an interview with Walter Hill, which is fantastic because Walter Hill is a really good interview as well. There's an alternate opening, original teasers and theatrical trailer. So that's The Driver, which you could argue is the best film in the bunch. And then you have 1980s The Long Riders. Again, I think this is available elsewhere. But this actually has the 2 discs, because there's a lot of special features in this one, so you get the film and the special features on separate discs. Again, this is another version of the Jesse James story, but using the Carradine brothers, the Keach brothers, who kind of started the project 10 years earlier almost, and the Quaid brothers. Allegedly, Jeff and Beau Bridges were almost in this film. There's also the Guest brothers, Nicholas and Christopher, one who plays Robert Ford. And again, you get a real sense of place and time. There's something about Walter Hill films that are generally authentic, and his stuff is generally, there's a truth to Walter Hill films. I don't think he's trying to hoodwink anybody. You could argue he's a big Western fan, a big John Ford fan, so you could argue pretty much all of his films are Westerns, strangely enough, including the Westerns. So disc 1's got a commentary with Howard Berger, Steve Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson from 2023, and it's also got a commentary by film historian Toby Rowan from 2023, and the theatrical trailer. But then the special features in disc 2 has an interview with Keith Carradine and Robert Carradine. It's got an interview with Stacey Keach and James Keach. It's got an interview with Randy Quaid, who has a huge beard. An interview with Nicholas Guest, an interview with Walter Hill, an interview with Ry Cooder, who also did a lot of music for Walter Hill films, including Southern Comfort. Interview with producer Tim Zinnemann. There's an Outlaw Brothers, The Making of the Long Riders documentary, and the Northfield, Minnesota Raid Anatomy of a Scene featurette, and Slow Motion Walter Hill on Sam Peckinpah featurette. A lot of people have kind of said, well, Walter Hill's a kind of cut rate, Sam Peckinpah. You'd never guess that watching The Long Riders with lots of slow motion and lots of bloodletting and people going through windows. But as far as I know, Walter Hill didn't make most of these films drunk. He was an assistant on a couple of Peckinpah films. So that's The Long Riders, which is very good. And then we have 1987's Extreme Prejudice. Again, this is available elsewhere in Blu-ray. Nick Nolte and Powers Booth. And a wonderful early performance by Michael Ironside, because Michael Ironside did a lot of work in Canada before he came to America. He talks about being kind of intimidated by being on the same set as Nick Nolte and Rip Torn. You kind of forget that, or you can't imagine Michael Ironside being nervous, but apparently he was actually nervous making this film. Again, this is a wonderful, solid, entertaining film about friends who are now on either side of the law, mixed in with Michael Ironside and a bunch of mercenaries of ex-military guys that he believes, or he tells them it's part of a covert operation to get Powers Booth, who's the drug lord, but perhaps doesn't play out like that. So again, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of Wild Bunch parallels in this, especially at the end. This has a commentary by Walter Chow from 2022, a commentary by Daniel Kramer and Nat Segaloff, is that a real name, from 2022, and a commentary by C. Courtney Joyner and Henry Park. It's an isolated score selection with an audio interview from music historian John Tukis. There's 2 interviews with Walter Hill from 2010 and 2019. There's a great interview with Michael Ironside, again, where he talks about being really nervous, and kind of the first thing that he had to shoot was him crossing the road. He was so nervous he couldn't just like walk across the road, and Walter Hill gave him some really good advice. And then there's another great interview with Clancy Brown called The War Within. And then Capturing the Chaos is an interview with the director of photography Matthew E. Leonetti, and there's original trailers and photo gallery. So again, Extreme Prejudice, it might not be a masterpiece, but again, it's just a lot of fun and really enjoyable. And then one of the films that I hadn't seen before, Johnny Handsome and Mickey Rourke, which I remember coming out on VHS. This is from 1989. About a mix of the Elephant Man and Mask, small-time gangster who gets put in prison after a robbery goes bad, and for some reason gets reconstruction surgery and gets back on the people that screwed him over. But really, the enjoyment of this film is the supporting cast. I mean, Mickey Rourke's good in it, but you've got Morgan Freeman as a really kind of nasty, cynical police officer. You know, back when Morgan Freeman actually played, kind of more cynical characters rather than these wonderful human beings that he kind of built his career on. Ellen Barkin is absolutely fantastic as the femme fatale character. I'm actually surprised this also didn't turn up in one of Imprint's neo-noir sets, because it's essentially a neo-noir. But really, for me, the star of the show, there's a young Forrest Whitaker who's excellent, and Elizabeth McGovern who's excellent, and Scott Wilson who's always value for money. But the real star of the show for me is Lance Henriksen. This is one of the essential Lance Henriksen performances. He's channeling Near Dark in this. He's channeling Jesse from Near Dark, the head of the vampire wandering family. He's just like on the edge, completely dangerous, a nasty piece of work, and he's just absolutely fantastic. Whenever he's on the screen, you can't really take your eyes off him. It's just, again, is this a great film? Probably not, but it's just so enjoyable when you get all these kind of character actors together. And again, there's really well handled action scenes. Is what Walter Hill does really well. It's a really intense bank robbery, as there is in Extreme Prejudice. This one has a commentary by Walter Chow from 2022. This has a commentary by Daniel Kramer and Scout Tafoya in 2022. Walter Hill interview from 2022. An interview with the writer Ken Friedman from 2010. An interview with makeup artist Michael Westmore in 2010. And an interview with stuntman Alan Graff in 2010. I'm not sure if this has got a Blu-ray somewhere else. I'm not quite sure on that. So that's Johnny Handsome. Again, wonderful and a lot of fun. And then finally, we go from 1989 to 2006. And this is Broken Trail Robert Duvall and Thomas Hayden Church, Greta Scacchi. This is a two-part TV movie that Hill made with AMC. So it's in two parts, but it's 184 minutes. But for me, it's actually too short. I could watch this all day long, and obviously at over 3 hours, it takes up part of your day. I've read reviews of this, and people say, "Oh, this is Walter Hill going soft," but technically he was in his 60s when he made it. By the kind of blurb at the end of the film, actually suggests it's based on a true story. Robert Duvall is Thomas Hayden Church's uncle, who comes to find him. He's just a general cowhand, but he comes to find him to say his mother died and they had a beef with each other, so Robert Duvall got left the ranch back home and all the cattle and stuff. But Robert Duvall gives Thomas Hayden Church a proposition, because they want to travel about 1,000 miles with a bunch of horses to get paid. And Thomas Hayden Church decides to do that, and then there's another story about 5 Chinese girls that are sold into slavery and sold to the West to become prostitutes, and their paths cross, and it ends up that they take in these 5 Chinese girls, and it's all the forces and people they meet across or along the trail. It's essentially a road movie, and yes, you could argue, the 3 guys, as they do, pick up a cowboy who plays the fiddle along the way. One person has said, there must be the only 3 nice white men in the West. There must have been some nice white men in the West at some point. Surely they all weren't murdering, raping and giving smallpox to the Native Americans or the people. So I don't really have a problem with that. Walter Hill doesn't shy away from the kind of brutal reality of day-to-day living in the West. This is set in 1898. So he doesn't shy away, he doesn't sugarcoat it just because it's a TV movie. There are still some brutal scenes in it. But really, the film is as if we didn't need a reminder, but it's just a reminder of how great Robert Duvall is. His character is just absolutely awesome. Again, people can say, well, it's a softening Walter Hill, but even Robert Duvall's character does some relatively nasty things when he has to, and does make decisions that aren't necessarily lawful when he has to protect the party. So I don't really get it's too nice a Western, because again, it's still brutal in places, and it's really just a celebration of how awesome Robert Duvall is. There is a making of on the disc where Robert Duvall talks about it being kind of the end of a trilogy for him, with Open Range and Lonesome Dove. Thomas Hayden Church is fantastic as well. Greta Scacchi, who plays a prostitute who ends up joining them. She was nominated for an Emmy for performance. So I think it's actually possibly the second best film in the set, behind The Driver. And it's, again, 184 minutes. It was just too short. Because again, you could have made the film in 2 hours, but I think lots of the character stuff and the film's actually allowed to breathe. Because if you listen to Walter Hill and some of the extras, so for example, The Long Riders, the original cut was a lot longer because, again, he wanted the character stuff. So for a director that's known for action and testosterone and stuff like that, you know, he wanted more character stuff in The Long Riders about the relationship between the men and their wives or girlfriends or whatever. And in Broken Trail, he manages to actually get some more time, because it's a TV miniseries essentially, to develop those actual characters. Obviously, we know Geronimo, his wonderfully underrated film, West Studi, and you know, originally that was going to have a longer cut as well. So again, as I say, for a guy that has the reputation of just doing action, I think there is a lot more to Walter Hill. You could say, you know, his values are kind of old-fashioned, very much like Robert Duvall's values in Broken Trail and in general, perhaps. And Walter Hill, you know, maybe wanted to grow up in the Old West because he has that kind of soul. But I think there is more to Walter Hill than just car chases and shootouts. So again, if you don't have his films, even though I think this might have actually sold out, but if you don't have any of his films, I think it's well worth picking up. As I say, most of them I think are available elsewhere, probably a much cheaper option. But this is a lovely set, and again, as I say, I don't think Walter Hill really gets enough credit. I mean, obviously did 48 Hours and another 48 Hours, and The Warriors, which Imprint also released in a nice hard box edition. Southern Comfort, which probably deserves a deluxe set at some point. And he even did the version of Brewster's of Millions with Richard Pryor, which you kind of forget about. So that's Walter Hill. Please let me know what you think of Walter Hill and what your favourite Walter Hill film is. And hopefully you'll join me again for more episodes of In the Frame. This is Solitude Ronan from Solitude Ronan Films, saying farewell.